Welcome, folks. Welcome to another session of Truth, otherwise known as the Truth Sessions. With me, myself here. The Cooper Matrix is, of course, what we're focusing on. Just don't want to waste too much time here. So let's get into that. Make sure we get to the right page here. Okay. Okay, we're there. That's interesting, but it looks like we're still up here. So let's see. All right, let's start here. The household industry. The industries of finance, banking, manufacturing, and government, real counterparts of the pure industries of capital, goods, and services, are easily defined because they are generally logically structured. Because of this, their process can be described mathematically, and their technical coefficients can be easily deduced. This, however, is not the case with the service industry known as the household industry. Household models. The problem with a theoretical economist faces the let me start that again. Apologies. The problem which a theoretical economist faces is that the consumer preferences of any household is not easily predictable, and the technical coefficients of any one household tend to be a nonlinear, very complex, and variable function of income, prices, etc. Computer information derived from the use of the Universal Product Code in conjunction with credit card purchase as an individual household identifier could change this state of affairs. But the UPC method is not yet available on a national or even a significant regional scale. Of course, as we know now, that changes. To compensate for this data deficiency, an alternative indirect approach of analysis has been adopted known as economic shock testing. This method, widely used in the aircraft manufacturing industry, develops an aggregate statistical sort of data. Applied to economics, this means that all of the households in one region or in the whole nation are studied as a group or class rather than individually, and the mass behavior rather than the individual behavior is used to discover useful estimates of the technical coefficients governing the economic structure of the hypothetical single household industry. One method of evaluating technical coefficients of the household industry depends upon shocking the prices of a commodity and noting the changes in sales of all the commodities. So basically, folks, while they were working on getting the barcodes, UPC codes more widespread, so they can kind of track what people are buying, how much of that they are buying, things of that nature. They're also making sure that what if we raise the price of something? Would that, would the prices still, would the production still stay the same? Would the same amount of people still go out and buy that particular product, regardless of how the price is raised? Will they, will the numbers go down as they feel like the main thing that pulled them into that particular product was the price? It's just to kind of see how people respond to a certain situation, and and lets them know how valuable is that product. How can we use that product to steer or manipulate people even? Economic shock testing. In recent times, the application of operations research to the study of the public economy has been obvious for anyone who understands the principles of shock testing. In the shock testing of an aircraft airframe, the recoil impulse of firing a gun mounted on that airframe causes shock waves in that structure, which tell aviation engineers that conditions under which parts of the airplane or the whole airplane or its wings will start to vibrate or flutter like a guitar string, flute reed, or a tuning fork and disintegrate or fall apart in flight. Economic engineers achieve the same result in studying the behavior of the economy and the consumer public by carefully selecting a staple of commodities such as beef, coffee, gasoline, or sugar, and then causing a sudden change or shock in its price or availability, thus kicking everybody's budget and buying habits out of shape. Then they observe the shock waves which result by monitoring the changes in advertising, prices, and sales of that and other commodities. The objective of such studies is to acquire the know-how to set the public economy into a predictable state of motion or change, even a controlled self-destructive state of motion, which will convince the public that certain expert people should take control of the money system and reestablish security rather than liberty and justice for all. When the subject citizens are rendered unable to control their financial affairs, they, of course, become totally enslaved, a cheap source of labor. Not only the prices of commodities, but also, excuse me, the availability of labor can be used as the means of shock testing. Labor strikes deliver excellent test shocks to an economy, especially in the critical service areas of trucking, transportation, communication, public utilities such as energy, water, garbage collection, etc. By shock testing, it is found that there is a direct relationship between the availability of money flowing in an economy and the psychological outlook and response of masses of people dependent upon that availability. For example, there is a measurable quantitative relationship between the price of gasoline and the probability that a person would experience a headache, feel a need to watch a violent movie, smoke a cigarette, or go to a tavern for a mug of beer. It is most interesting that by observing and measuring the economic modes by which the public tries to run from their problems and escape from reality, by applying the mathematical theory of operations research, it is possible to program computers to predict the most probable combination of created events, shocks, which will bring about a complete control and subjugation of the public through a subversion of the public economy by shaking the plum tree. So basically, folks, by making you feel like the world is unstable and in your hands will be even more unstable, you entrust the government, these financial experts, these people and these corporations to handle your money and to handle things for you so that things don't crumble around you. Because, if I couldn't afford this, if I couldn't afford that, what would I do? So they make you feel that you need to trust in someone of that nature in order to have the security that you're really seeking overall. I mean, it becomes a very interesting situation because at what point, because again, even it seems like people forget the parent-child situation. When you're raised by your parents, you become 18, 19 years old, you go to college, you start figuring things out, you become an adult. It's all of that to that end is at some point you're going to move from beyond your parents and start doing your own thing, start your own family, start creating things for yourself. And that's supposed to be the whole point, I think, at least when it comes to, being an individual in this world. You should want to be able to be out there on your own and not constantly feel like you have to run into the arms of the government or the state or whatever to basically help you out. At least that's what I came up believing. But of course, the people right before the new millennium, I graduated maybe a year or two right before the new millennium. So we were right on the horizon of a bunch of lies. So the Y2K and all that bullshit. Yeah, all of that. So but let's just keep on going here. Introduction to economic amplifiers. Economic amplifiers are the active components of economic engineering. The basic characteristic of any amplifier, be it mechanical, electrical, or economic is that it receives an input control signal and delivers energy from an independent energy source to a specified output terminal and a predictable relationship to that input control signal. The simplest form of excuse me, let's start again. The simplest form of economic amplifier is a device called advertising. If a person is spoken to by a TV advertiser as if he were a 12-year-old, then dude, I do apologize. Slow down. Then, due to suggestibility, he will, with a certain probability, respond or react to that suggestion with the uncritical response of a 12-year-old and will reach into his economic reservoir and deliver its energy to buy that product on impulse when he passes it in the store. An economic amplifier may have several inputs and outputs. Its response might be instantaneous or delayed. Its circuit symbol might be a rotary switch if its options are exclusive, qualitative, or go or no go. Or it might have its parametric input or output relationships specified by a matrix with internal energy sources represented. We said matrix here, folks. Whatever its form might be, its purpose is to govern the flow of energy from a source to an output sink in direct relationship to an input control signal. For this reason, it is called inactive circuit element or component. Economic amplifiers fall into classes called strategies. And in comparison with electronic amplifiers, the specific internal functions of an economic amplifier are called logistical instead of electrical. Therefore, economic amplifiers not only deliver power gain, but also, in effect, are used to cause changes in the economic circuitry. In the design of an economic amplifier, we must have some idea of at least 5 functions, which are the available input signals, the desired output control objectives, the strategic objective, the available economic power sources, the logistical options. The process of defining and evaluating these factors and incorporating the economic amplifier into an economic system has been popularly called game theory. The process of defining and evaluating these factors and the design of an economic amplifier with a specification of the power level of the output, which can range from personal to national. The second condition is accuracy of response. For example, how accurately the output action is a function of the input commands. High gain combined with strong feedback helps to deliver the required precision. Most of the error will be in the input data signal. Personal input data tends to be specific, while national input data tends to be statistical. Short list of inputs. Questions to be answered, of course, the classics. What, when, where, why, how, who, of course. General sources of information. Telephone taps, surveillance, analysis of garbage, the behavior of children in school, standard of living by food, clothing, shelter, and transportation. Social contacts. Telephone, itemized record of calls, family, marriage certificates, birth certificates, etc. Friends, associates, etc. Memberships in organizations, political affiliation. The personal paper trail. Personal buying habits, for example, personal consumer preferences, checking accounts, credit card purchases, tagged credit card purchases, the credit card purchase of products bearing the UPC, Universal Product Code. Assets such as checking accounts, savings accounts, real estate, business, automobiles, safety deposit at bank, stock market. The liabilities such as creditors, enemies, loans, consumer credit. Government sources or ploys, as he might put it, as he put it in here, he parentheses ploys. Welfare, Social Security, USDA surplus food, doles, grants, and subsidies. principle of this ploy. The citizen will almost always make the collection of information easy if he can operate on the free sandwich principle of eat now, pay later. Government sources via intimidation. Internal Revenue Service, or OSHA. Which, by the way, folks, one moment. Let's see what we got here, folks. Again, we're reading for real here. I was reading right from the chapter. I wasn't overly prepared. Let's see. Interesting. Let's see what we got here. Oh, okay. So I guess OSHA is sort of like FEMA, I guess, in a way. So I guess back in the day, OSHA was like FEMA. So it was like a emergency preparedness and response organization here. So apparently before FEMA, you had OSHA. So I guess when I guess people started to pick up on what OSHA really was or wasn't, I guess they decided to change it up to FEMA. So. Oh, that looks familiar. Okay. So let's see. Now, habit patterns, programming. Okay, strengths and weaknesses, activities, sports, hobbies, etc. See legal for fear, anger, and etc. Crime record, hospital records, drug sensitivities, reaction to pain, etc. Psychiatric records, fears, angers, disgust, adaptability, reactions to stimuli, violence, suggestibility, or hypnosis, pain, pleasure, love, and sex. Methods of coping, of adaptability, behavior, consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, entertainment, religious factors influencing behavior, other methods of escaping from reality. Payment modus operandi, pay on time, etc., payment of telephone bills, energy purchases, water purchases, payment of loans, house payments, automobile payments, payments on credit cards, political sensitivity, beliefs, contacts, positions, strengths and weaknesses, projects, activities, legal inputs, behavioral control, excuses for investigation, search, arrest, or employment of force to modify behavior, court records, police records, NCIC, national driving records, reports made to police, insurance information, anti-establishment acquaintances. So, folks, I mean, let's just get through this real quick. National input information, business sources via IRS, etc., prices of commodities, sales, investments in stocks and inventory, products, tools, and production tools and machinery, buildings and improvements, the stock market, banks and credit bureaus, credit information, payment information, miscellaneous sources, polls and surveys, publications, telephone records, energy, and utility purchases. So basically, folks, William Cooper was saying well before the 90s, well before the 90s, he was establishing and obtaining this information, which was letting you know, basically, folks, all information of what you do, what you endeavor into, what you touch in life is somehow, it's always been. That's the fact, folks. We've been talking for the last few years now, about the homeland surveillance, about the buying and selling of information, about the taking of our habits and using that to market to us and things like that. This book right here, right in chapter 1, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, William Cooper has basically been telling you for the last 3 or 4 decades now, okay, that this information was strategically used. All of it was strategically used and developed, and set up to basically know how to control you, to know how to stress you out, to know how to make you move and react to a certain thing. We make this happen. We'll see how the people react, how they go completely bonkers about that situation. Then we know how to control them. We know how to set things up. And if we put somebody in place that acts like they're going to do so much better and give so many fresh ideas to people and help them save money, so on and so forth. Getting interesting. But short list of outputs. Outputs meaning create controlled situations, manipulation of the economy, hence society, controlled by control of compensation and income. The sequence allocates opportunities, destroys opportunities, controls the economic environment, controls the availability of raw materials, controls capital, controls bank rates, controls the inflation of the currency, controls the possession of property, controls industrial capacity, controls manufacturing, controls the availability of goods, commodities, controls the prices of commodities, controls services, the labor force, etc., controls payments to government officials, controls the legal functions, controls the personal data files, uncorrectable by the party slandered, controls advertising, controls media contact, controls material available for TV viewing. This engages attention from real issues. This engages emotion, creates disorder, chaos, and insanity. Now, understand that, folks. Once again, anarchy is not chaos. Do you understand that what this order is trying to do? We don't want to create that disorder. We want people to live free, to live honestly, to be able to not feel like they have somebody over top of them, manipulating them and controlling them. They want to create this order so that you'll be scared and that you'll want to be controlled by someone. See, that's the whole thing. Anarchy is not chaos. We don't want, no one who's a real anarchist wants to control you. No, people, a person who does not want to be controlled would be wasting their own energy trying to control someone else. But folks, let's take a quick moment here, because we're hearing sounds that are making me feel like, oh boy, there are things happening. So let's see. Since we're doing the Cooper Matrix, let's see how the Oracle Octopus sounds. I mean, get it, folks? Oracle, Matrix, Cooper Matrix, Oracle. The Oracle was in the Matrix, talk Neo. Come on. I mean, I'm all being corny, but hey. The Oracle Octopus. People, please, no worries. I have not gone. I have not been taken. I'm still here. I have not been taken. Thank you very much. And we're back, folks. And I am venturing and pushing to complete this chapter. And then once we complete this chapter, of course, we will be going into, well, why don't we not just do that? We'll go ahead and just leave that a little surprise. Maybe it should be predictable, maybe not, but let's just go ahead and get through this as quickly as we can. Now that we've gotten through all of the information and the outputs and the things that they would try to use in order to steer a certain reaction, emotion, a certain change, a certain shift in the thinking and the focus, or even just distract you from something major that they don't want you asking questions about. But again, folks, hashtag question everything. But here we have the table of strategies. Now, this is what should be done. Do this. Keep the public ignorant. Maintain access to control points for feedback. Create preoccupation. Attack the family unit. A lot of people in, let's say, urban neighborhoods know a lot about how the family unit has been attacked and how that's made a much, much worse situation for a lot of people out there. Much respect to those who managed to rise above, regardless of the situation. Give less cash and more credit and doles. Attack the privacy of the church. Social conformity. Minimize the tax protest. Stabilize the consent. Tighten control of variables. Establish boundary conditions, proper timing. Maximize control, collapse of currency. To get this, well, maybe we should do it like this. Snappy situation here. Okay. Do this to get this. So this is how we're going to reel these off. Keep the public ignorant to get less public organization. Maintain access to control points for feedback to get required reaction to outputs, prices, sales. Create preoccupation to lower defenses. Attack the family unit to get control of the education of the young. So basically, if they can break down the family unit where you may not be able to go to a private school, to pay for a private school, or live in a neighborhood where you can get a better public education. Because while they love, it's always this kind of thing of, you may be here, but you're still not here. So it's like they'll try to make it seem like private schools are way better than public schools. But there are some public schools out there. I'm almost certain. I'll even take a personal standpoint of it. You can do the numbers yourself and research it. Like I said, question everything. Virginia Beach public schools, I assure you, probably has a more advanced, substantial curriculum, than Newport News and Hampton schools. I'm almost sure of it. And I would definitely say that they're trying their best to shift because people have started speaking up. I think that the people, the people a bit older than myself, and then now we're starting to come along because now we have teenagers. We're starting to speak up about the educational system. We're starting to speak up and requiring more in our cities. So we have schools that are STEM programs now, governor STEM programs and magnet programs that have a more advanced, intensive education that's really trying to compete with today's world. So definitely, folks, if you allow your family to be broken up, single parents, things like that, you're living in less affluent neighborhoods, you have less concern about the educational system in those neighborhoods. You're having to be there. You're having to send your kids to that school, or you're having to send your kids to a daycare center that may be teaching them things that you may not be okay with them teaching. But this is what you can afford. And this is where they got you set up. You do what they told you. Now you're under control. But let's get back to it, folks. Give less cash and more credit and doles to get more self-indulgence and more data. Because see, paying in cash, no one can see what you pay in cash. Only somebody that's at the cash register, seeing what you're doing, can report to somebody else, this is what this person's doing. This is what this person's buying. But when you have that credit card, when you have that bank card all the time, and you're buying what you're buying, people are seeing what you're buying. It just gets to a point with me, I just don't have credit cards, and I don't really care about what people see me buying. I am a free, unafraid person. So I'm going to buy what the fuck I'm going to buy. And if you have an issue with what I'm buying, come see me on it. And I'll deal with that. I'll deal with the legalities of whatever you felt like I bought, with my bank card. But sometimes I like to play games just for shits and giggles, to be honest with you. It happens, But anyway. Attack the privacy of the church to destroy faith in this sort of government. So that maybe if someone who does have true faith and does have true intentions are willing to lead you in and willing to even speak up, even if that means upsetting the apple cart of the government and the state, then people can have more faith in them and less faith in the actual government themselves. So, but then I think what they started to do, I think a possible evolution in this particular point here is the fact that more churches now are being controlled. More churches now are being spotlighted. Like you have Scientology now. Okay, you have Scientology. You always had the Mormons, and things like that. So you have these religions that, and then you have where basically other religions have done more of the control, more of the detriment, and things like that. Time and time again. And then it's like no one tells those stories. It's like you have to have Hollywood stars now telling the stories about certain cult leaders and and evil religious figures that Hollywood flocked to. Shame to say, one of my heroes as a young kid, Mr. T, was involved in this, oh my God, Church of God, I believe it was. And I'll get more on that. But, Tony Alamo, it's craziness. And it's fabric of America, man. You can keep going back. People just make it seem like Jim Jones. It's just Jim Jones, David Koresh. It's Jim Jones, David Koresh, Tony Alamo. It just keeps fucking going. Jim and Tammy Faye. Jimmy Swaggart. It just keeps on fucking going. So I think that became the evolution of this, to where they control people's faith is by controlling the religion. Of course, the number one way over the top religion that just doesn't give a fuck about what you think is the Catholic Church. God diddles your kid, I'm not going to punish him. He's not even going to become a priest anymore. He's going to go someplace else where they don't know about him diddling kids. And maybe he might not diddle kids anymore, but maybe he might. Who's to say? Social conformity to get computer programming simplicity. Minimize the tax protests to maximum economic data, minimum enforcement problems. Stabilize the consent to get simplicity coefficients. Tighten control of variables to get simpler computer input data for greater predictability. So that way, if you can get people to a certain mindset and generate the data at which people will move to a certain thing, if we control what you eat, what you move, we'll see what people respond to more and focus more on getting you that to keep you placated, to keep you under control and not thinking about the other things that you should be thinking about. Like, why are we paying for taxes? Like, once again, like I told you, folks, why are we paying for taxes? And then people make you feel so shitty about whenever you need those taxes in different sorts of ways. corporation out here because there's national right to work, by the way, folks, in every state except Montana. Because Montana's about living free or dying, folks, apparently. So, they don't give a fuck about, any right to work and being able to say, I can fire you anytime I want for any reason. And then you can just go out here and get much less pay. I can dick you over in your job. That's what right to work is, folks. I can dick you over in your job. You run to unemployment as employment insurance, I like to call it. Okay. They give you much less. I mean, not even 50% of what you were making before your job was snatched from you. Then on top of that, they require you to immediately be out looking for jobs, looking for employment, to as quickly get off of employment insurance, which is supposed to be for you, by the way. Excuse me, folks. Which is supposed to be for you. But they make you feel shitty about wanting it, first of all. Then, you feel like a bum because you're getting way less than what you've earned and a job that was taken away from you unjustly. Then you need to be out here applying for a job. You need to know. We need to figure out. You can't, and you can't make, it's like you can't make any other money. So it's like if you're out here making a little bit of money here, some part-time stuff, or maybe a little bit of commission, they try to build up some money here. You make any money, then they're acting like you're being overpaid. I mean, this is the way the world works for folks, even in the working world. This is how you're treated. That's unemployment insurance. It's sat there, but they call it, it's employment insurance. They call it unemployment. But it's employment insurance. See, it's car insurance. They call it wreck insurance. They call it car insurance. Your car is insured. So your employment should be insured. But what they do is that they give you a deductible, a payoff that is just despicable. And then they just make you out there and try and act like I'm really trying to get employment so I can really try to get off of employment insurance as quickly as I can. Because somehow it's unfair to the corporation that fucked you over, that you're sitting around, getting paid. But you were fired for no reason. Because that's what right to work is. They can fire you for any reason or no reason at all. And you have to, this is what we're dealing with. So that's what I'm talking about. But we pay taxes. We do things, and this is how we're treated. But let's try to get through this, folks, before it gets too far along. Apologize. Establish boundary conditions to get problem simplicity. Solutions of differential and difference equations. Do proper timing to get less data shift and blurring. Maximize control to get minimum resistance to control. Collapse of currency to destroy the faith of the American people and each other. Okay? The primary strategy. Strategery. Experience has proven that the simplest method of securing a silent weapon and gaining control of the public is to keep the public undisciplined and ignorant. It was put in big bold letters like that, so I felt like that was the best way to say that. Of basic systems principles on the one hand, while keeping them confused, disorganized, and distracted with matters of no real importance on the other hand. All emphasis. But this is achieved by disengaging their minds, sabotaging their mental activities, providing a low-quality program of public education in mathematics, logic, systems design, and economics, and discouraging technical creativity. Engaging their emotions, increasing their self-indulgence and their indulgence in emotional and physical activities by unrelenting emotional affrontations and attacks, mental and emotional rape. Yes, he wrote rape in this, folks. Mental and emotional rape by way of a constant barrage of sex, violence, and wars in the media, especially the TV and the newspapers, giving them what they desire in excess, junk food for thought, and depriving them of what they really need, rewriting history and law and subjecting the public to, rewriting history and law and subjecting the public to the deviant creation, thus being able to shift their thinking from personal needs to highly fabricated outside priorities. These preclude their interest in and discovery of the silent weapons of social automation technology. Their general rule is that there is profit in confusion. The more confusion, the more profit. Therefore, the best approach is to create problems and then offer the solutions. The diversion summary: media keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance, folks. Playoffs, sports events, concerts, festivals. But then a festival, but then the weird thing happens, right? A festival or a fantasy festival, I guess you could say now, fraud festival, the Fire Festival, that was, oh yes, for those of you in the hip hop, Ja Rule was definitely involved in that big time. He didn't watch the damn documentary. I damn sure did. That motherfucker was involved. My brother, my partner, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, oh yeah, living the life, living right. Okay, whatever. Okay. I always think sometimes he kind of sound like he was trying to be like a Black Rocky or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, basically, it's sort of like what happened with that is that you realize at that point that the distraction became the social issue. What happened to those people that paid all that money and went out there thinking that they were going to get just ultimate luxury festival experience and got complete shit? And why did they believe in this? Because people who call themselves social media influencers told them that that would be the case. Having no real knowledge of anything that's going on. The media, the social media and internet marketing of the Fyre Fest was just brilliant. And it was almost Ponzi scheme-esque. I mean, it was almost Bernie Madoff type of fucking level there. Craziness. But that's what you had. And it really brought to light how people are influenced by these other people. And these people were completely fooled and bullshitted. And that's the difference, folks, with these bloggers, these vloggers, these social media influencers. That's the difference between them and a journalist. Me as a journalist, I would have to have some information. Send me some footage. How's everything looking? Can we get some updates? I would love to show some people on my site or on my damn Twitter page or on my fucking Instagram, whatever. I would love to show people what's going on out there. How's it looking out there? What do they have to look forward to? They have paid their money. So I think it's only right that they would be able to see what they can expect to be a part of once they get out there. You know, but see, when you start asking those questions, when you start talking to the social media marketing people about maybe asking them, hey, what have you seen? What's going on out here? You know, and getting some answers or not getting some answers. But for a journalist like myself, not getting answers is like getting answers. Because if you don't answer my question, then I'm going to assume that there's a reason why you didn't want to answer my question. I don't know isn't good enough. You might want to ask the people who's organizing, but you are the guys who are marketing this. Do you have any knowledge? You guys are going to be there. Do you have any knowledge of this happening? This is see when this stuff starts happening, shit starts unraveling. And then before people get their asses out there to that event and find out that it's shit, people like me will start letting them know, hey, it's shit. But see, what happened is a guy who was a regular schmegular guy and not part of any organization at that particular time, he started to become part of one as this thing started to really start taking shape. He tried his best. I'll give him credit, folks. A citizen journalist tried his best to let people know, hey, this shit is not looking good. It's not looking like this shit is really going to happen. It really, he did his best, but nobody will really listen. And it came out there to a nightmare. I just want to say, folks, that this kind of where the two things collide, where the media, the distraction, the social issues, being distracted from what's really going on out here in this world, they collided, folks. They collided. You had to realize we're being bullshitted by these people who we think are young and they're free and they're this and they're about the people, and they're not. They're about presenting a lifestyle to you. They're about presenting a certain thing to you. And they thought they were going to be presenting something to you at that point. And then they didn't. And then some of the people, especially the social media people, including some female social media influencers, were definitely taken care of and put up in a luxury little villa hotel thing. And they were fine. They were comfortable. Some male social media influencers and all the rest of the regular people that did whatever they could, selling things, quitting jobs to be out here, got a nightmare, got fucked, got shitty cheese sandwiches. Now, when you paid a lot of money, shitty cheese sandwiches, not just a cheese sandwich. You would think a cheese sandwich is shitty on its own when you pay all that money for a luxury festival. But a really shitty cheese sandwich. I mean, I can't stress that enough, how that cheese sandwich looked, folks. Anyway, let's see. Well, entertainment, okay. Diversion summary. Once again, keep the public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, real history. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Are you smarter than a 5th grader? And then they keep trying to prove to you that you're not. I'm just saying, folks, you can call it a conspiracy theory all you want, but I mean, here it is. I'm just reading from the book, and then there's a show out that John Cena has that for the longest time. I mean, it's weird. It's sort of a weird irony to the situation, right? But for so many years, Jeff Foxworthy hosted that show, and now John Cena has all of a sudden said, "I want to take over hosting the show." Are you smarter than a 5th grader? But anyway, with work. Keep the public busy with no time to think. Back on the farm with the other animals. Consent, the primary victory. A silent weapons system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal but not always lawful force. Much information is made available to silent weapons systems programmers through the Internal Revenue Service. And you can see the studies in the structure of the American economy for an IRS source list. The information consists of the enforced delivery of well-organized data contained in federal and state tax forms collected, assembled, and submitted by slave labor provided by taxpayers and employers. Furthermore, the number of such forms submitted to the IRS is a useful indicator of public consent, an important factor in strategic decision-making. Other data sources are given in the short list of inputs. Consent coefficients, numerical feedback. Here, come on. Numerical feedback indicating victory status. Psychological basis. Gonna die, bug. Sorry. Had to happen. Psychological basis. When the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without just compensation, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. A good and easily quantified indicator of harvest time is the number of public citizens who pay income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal or honest service from the government. Plain terms, folks, what William Cooper was saying way back before the 90s is that basically, folks, paying taxes let people know, let the government know, let those guys behind the government know that We're getting taxed, not represented like back before, like what those wars were about. No taxation without representation. We're feeling that. We're feeling like we're not being represented in our government, in politics, but yet we're still allowing ourselves to be taxed. We're still not doing the things that we need to do because we're afraid of prison. We're afraid to stand up and really challenge these laws and really challenge these systems that the government stands by and continues to enslave us off of. Check into it, question everything, folks. Application energy sources. The next step in the process of designing an economic amplifier is discovering the energy sources. The energy sources which support any primitive economic system are, of course, a supply of raw materials and the consent of people to labor and consequently assume a certain rank, position, level, or class in the social structure, to provide labor at various levels in the pecking order. Each class, in guaranteeing its own level of income, controls the class immediately below it, hence preserves the class structure. This provides the stability and security, but also government from the top. So basically, folks, the government is going to have the most money. The wealthy, the 1%. The wealthy's few are going to be in league with the government. They control the middle class. The middle class essentially controls the low income class. Middle class is more middle management. You know, the supervisors, most times, the project managers and things like that, they control the more regular labor. But we'll get into that. Okay. And as time goes on and communication and education improve, the lower class elements of the social labor structure become knowledgeable and envious of the good things that the upper class members have. They also begin to attain a knowledge of energy systems and the ability to enforce their rise through the class structure. This threatens the sovereignty of the elite. If this rise of the lower classes can be postponed long enough, the elite can achieve energy dominance, and labor by consent no longer will hold a position of an essential economic energy source. So basically, if they can control the money and the power and the real estate and resources, that no matter how knowledgeable they become, no matter if they consent to working or not, because they control the money, they control how the government moves, you either go along or you get crushed. So you don't have to consent. You don't have to just consent to go along and act like it's all good. You can not, and you can be crushed. Or you can understand this is what it is and get with the program. Until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of people to labor and let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration, since failure to do so could cause the people to interfere in the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite. It is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. Therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. The logistics, the successful application of a strategy requires a careful study of inputs, outputs, the strategy connecting the inputs and the outputs and the available energy sources to fuel the strategy, This study is called logistics. A logistical problem is studied at the elementary level first, and then levels of greater complexity are studied as a synthesis of elementary factors. This means that a given system is analyzed, broken down into its subsystems, and these in turn are analyzed until, by this process, one arrives at the logistical atom, the individual. This is where the process of synthesis is properly begins, and at the time of the birth of the individual. The artificial womb. From the time a person leaves its mother's womb, its every effort is directed towards building, maintaining and withdrawing into artificial wombs, various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. The objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary processes of growth and maturity, i.e., survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide defensive protection for offensive activity. This is equally true of both the general public and the elite. However, there is a definite difference in the way each of these classes go about the solution of problems. The political structure of a nation, dependency. The primary reason why the individual citizens of a country create a political structure is a subconscious wish or desire to perpetuate their own dependency relationship of childhood. Simply put, they want a human God to eliminate all risk from their life, pat them on the head, kiss their bruises, put a chicken on every dinner table, clothe their bodies, tuck them into bed at night, and tell them that everything is going to be all right. When they wake up in the morning, the public demand is incredible. So the human God, the politician, meets incredibility with incredibility by promising the world and delivering nothing. So who is the bigger liar, the public or the Godfather? This public behavior is surrender born of fear, laziness, and expediency. It is the basis of the welfare state as it is the basis of the welfare state as a strategic weapon, useful against a disgusting public. Most people want to be able to subdue Most people want to be able to subdue and or kill other human beings which disturb their daily lives. But they do not want to have to cope with the moral and religious issues which such an overt act on their part might raise. Therefore, they assign the dirty work to others, including their own children, so as to keep the blood off their own hands. They rave about the humane treatment of animals and then sit down to a delicious hamburger from a whitewashed slaughterhouse down the street and out of sight. But even more hypocritical, they pay taxes to finance a professional association of hitmen, collectively called politicians, and then complain about corruption in government. Now, William Cooper wasn't exactly giving you an Alex Jones kamikaze call to war, but he was saying, hey, look, folks, you got to understand that this whole tax thing is a sham. You're not getting what you're paying for. You're paying all these taxes every single year, sales taxes, all different taxes, and you're getting next to nothing. They make you feel like shit whenever you need the government for help. Maybe you shouldn't pay taxes. Maybe you should figure out a way to nullify your taxes. You know, I do it myself, folks. I try. I work hard at that all the time. But at any rate, responsibility. Yikes. Okay, got to move through this, folks. Again, most people want to be free to do things, explore, etc., but they are afraid to fail. The fear of failure is manifested in irresponsibility, and especially in delegating those personal responsibilities to others, where success is uncertain and or carries possible or created liabilities, law, which the person is not prepared to accept. They want authority, root word author, but they will not accept the responsibility or liability, so they hire politicians to face reality for them. Summary: the people hire the politicians so that the people can obtain security without managing it, obtain action without thinking about it, inflict theft, injury, and death upon others without having to contemplate either life or death, avoid responsibility for their own intentions, obtain the benefits of reality and science without exerting themselves in the discipline of facing or learning either of these things, either of those things being reality and science. So they don't want to face reality, but want to be able to take all the benefits of the reality in science and progression, but without being able to actually learn about them or facing up to them. They give the politicians the power to create and manage a war machine to provide for the survival of a nation, of the nation or womb, prevent encroachment of anything upon the nation, the womb, destroy the enemy who threatens that nation womb, destroy those citizens of their own country who do not conform for the sake of the stability of the nation womb or the womb nation. Okay? Politicians hold many quasi-military jobs, the lowest being the police, which are soldiers, attorneys, and CPAs next, who are spies and saboteurs licensed, and the judges who shout the orders and run the closed union military shop for whatever the market will bear. The generals are industrialists. The presidential level of commander-in-chief is shared by the international bankers. The people know that they have created this farce and financed it with their own taxes, but they would rather knuckle under than be the hypocrite. Thus, a nation becomes divided into two very distinct parts: a docile subnation, great silent majority, and a political subnation. The political subnation remains attached to the docile subnation, tolerates it, and leeches its substance until it grows strong enough to detach itself and then devour its parent. System analysis. In order to make meaningful computerized economic decisions about war, the primary economic flywheel, it is necessary to assign concrete logistical values to each element of the war structure, personnel and material alike. This process, with a clear and candid description of the subsystems of such a structure. Apologize, folks. I need to get back a little bit. The draft as a military service. Few efforts of human behavior modification are more remarkable or more effective than the social military institution known as the draft. A primary purpose of a draft or such institution is to instill by intimidation in the young males of a society the uncritical conviction that the government is omnipotent. And a note from William Cooper: the truth is just the opposite, as government exists only with the consent of the people. He is soon taught that a prayer is slow to reverse what a bullet can do in an instant. Thus, a man trained in a religious environment for 18 years of his life can, by this instrument of the government, be broken down, be purged of his fantasies and delusions in a matter of mere months. Once that conviction is instilled, all else becomes easy to instill. Even more interesting is the process by which a young man's parents, who purportedly love him, can be induced to send him off to a war to his death. And again, folks, we're getting about to an hour here, and I do want to close this out. I thought I could get through, but it's so many pages here, folks, and I do want to explain. But very quick, folks, I want to at least give you some of the factors of enforcement. Okay, we have basically the draft, what we started out, but then we have the father. The factor 3 is the mother. Factor 4, junior, the person himself, the individual himself, sister. And factor 5 is sister. Factor 6 is cattle. So these are all the factors that go into pressuring a young man. I'm not sure. Can I go ahead and let's see? Can I do this, folks? Let's try. Okay. By which a young man's parents were living against him. Although the scope of this work would not allow this matter to be expanded in full detail, nevertheless, a course overview will be possible and to reveal those factors which must be included in some numerical form in a computer analysis of social and war systems. We begin with a tentative definition of the draft. The draft, selective service, etc., is an institution of compulsory collective sacrifice and slavery, devised by the middle-aged and the elderly for the purpose of pressing the young into doing the public dirty work. It further serves to make the youth as guilty as the elders, thus making criticism of the elders by the youth less likely. Generational stabilizer. It is marketed and sold to the public under the label of patriotic or national service. Once a candid economic definition of the draft is achieved, that definition is used to outline the boundaries of a structure called a human value system, which in turn is translated into terms of game theory. The value of such a slave laborer is given in the table of human values, a table broken down into categories by intellect, experience, post-service job demand, etc. Some of these categories are ordinary and can be tentatively evaluated in terms of the value of certain jobs for which a fee exists. Wow, folks, I mean, we're really just... But like I said, we pretty much got to the end here, folks. I will definitely finish up the next time we do the corporate matrix very quickly, and then we'll get into chapter 2, which chapter 2 is, of course, secret societies and the new world order. But we will just basically clean up the last little bit, those factors, which once again, folks, is the draft is the first factor. The national super patriot pressure that they put on you. Factor 2, father. Factor 3, mother. Factor 4, yourself as the individual. Factor 5, the sister. And factor 5, the sister, excuse me. And factor 6, cattle. The people. The sheeple. All right, folks, but before we have any more issues, let's go ahead and close this out. Hopefully I'm still going here, but if not, we'll definitely clean things up a little bit towards